Thank you to the two people in the back that are paying attention to me. I'm related to one of them, that's cool. I am having a great day here at Signature, but someone is having an amazing day, and that's Barbara. Yay! Barbara closed her $3 million deal today, or yesterday. And she literally just talked about it 30 days in a sales meeting, so it must have been a meeting that did it, right?
Yeah, it was, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
10% commission you get from Barbara.
Sure, yeah. I make the jokes around here. I lost my train of thought. It takes so long to get it back. So it's also a special day for a very great individual with our company, Shelly P. It is her birthday today, so if you have not reached out to her to tell her happy birthday, please do. And if you send her a loan on top of it, I'm sure it would be like a gift for her. But with that, we're going to have Jason come up and share with us the mortgage moment. So give Jason a round of applause.
Thank you very much. So, who has heard the question out in the market lately that the bubbles, do you think the bubble's about to burst, and do you think that I shouldn't buy right now because it's going to be too expensive? Yeah. Anybody in the room? Okay, glad it's not just me. So before I dive in with my response, I was going to see if anybody wants to volunteer their response of what they say when they hear that wonderful phrase.
I sent them Shelly's slides.
Shelly slides, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Gotcha. What do you say if you're at the supermarket, you don't have Shelly slides?
I told them that even if the crash is 30%, it's like January last year. Right?
Not bad. Not bad for sure. And all of them work.
Either you're paying your own mortgage or someone else's.
Very true. So what I'm going to do is kind of go a little bit more analytical with that exact part, because that's kind of what I do. I do the whole analytic thing, so I like to attack it with facts as much as possible.
Yep.
So I wrote down some cheat sheets, so don't mind me if I look down at my sheet a little bit. Right now, since 2019, in most markets across the way, if you bought a $360,000 home, that home's worth $475,000. Just to let you know what waiting does for you over the last 2 years.
Wow.
Back in 2008, my biggest argument back to that argument is they say, well, it's going to crash and we're in the air of the bubble and everything's going to go down like crazy. Well, why did it go down like crazy in 2008?
It was financial.
The banks
We'll go one step further. What were the bad ones? What specifically were the bad ones?
Adjustable, you could fog a mirror and get one.
Close.
and also the banks were pretty much dictating the appraisers to say, I need 1,000 appraisers there.
100% true, but not where I was going. The NEGAM loans. Have you ever heard of a NEGAM loan?
No.
A NEGAM loan means, let's say that your principal and interest payment should have been $2,000 a month. So your interest-only payment should have been $1,500 a month. Well, a NEGAM loan worked in the exact opposite. That payment was closer to $1,100 a month. And the reason why is instead of paying down your loan actually was increasing every single month. That loan was popular in 2006 and 2007, along with the interest only. So if you had a home that was worth $400,000 and you bought it for $400,000 and your loan size was $400,000, and 2 years later you owed $420,000 and your home was worth $350,000, and your payment, by the way, because your NEGAM isn't due anymore, it's not $1,100, now it's going to shoot up to $2,200, which is what it's supposed to do. What makes a lot of financial sense to do? Walk away from the house.
Right.
Makes perfect sense. If rent is $1,500 and my new mortgage payment is $2,200 and I owe $420 and it's worth $350, you can take this out. I'm good. But what do we have today? What is the difference between today's bubble and their bubble? What are the loans? Equity good?
I think the biggest thing is that back in 2008, 9, and 10, about nationwide, about 75% of all homes were underwater.
Right.
Today, maybe 5%.
Okay. So what if they're underwater now? What if the same thing happened? What if your customer's right? What if they do go? What if you have a home that's $400,000 and it does go down to $350,000? What's the biggest difference between then and now? Now they have a fixed payment. Now they're on a 30-year fixed. It's closer to 99%, let alone 95% of the people that have a fixed payment out there. So that's right. So that payment that they have isn't going anywhere. And that leads me to the next part. What do you think the average rent in Las Vegas is for a 2-bedroom property anywhere in town?
Too damn much.
$1,600?
Not far. I heard $2,000 and I heard $1,600.
$1,800 to $2,000.
There you go. I just looked up at Google 5 minutes ago, so this is accurate. 1890 hits it right on the head. You want a 2-bedroom place, and I'm not even saying where, in Las Vegas, that's going to cost you $1,900 a month. If you want to buy a $400,000 home with 5% down, I'm including HOA, I'm including insurance, I'm including taxes, I'm including mortgage insurance. How much is that payment?
About 18.
Not too far off, no, not that low. About 24, not too bad, $500 more. This place that I lived up here has a 4-bedroom and 3-bath, and is in a decent neighborhood, and it's the first one that I found on Zillow, whether it's available or not, obviously that's up for debate, but the stats on Zillow are correct for the amounts that it costs. The point is this, I'll sum it up now since I'm sure I'm out of time. If somebody says to you that it's just like 2008 and there's going to be a massive crash and it's going to go down, the biggest difference is you cannot rent the same home for what you owe. Your monthly payment is still lower than your rent. That's the biggest difference. Back then, you can just go rent something nicer and cheaper. It made sense to walk away. Now it doesn't make sense to walk away. So even if they're right, even if inflation nation is killing us, even if this, that, or the other, your 30-year fixed payment is still lower than your rent. Hence, even if we are in a bubble, even if you think it's going to explode, where are they going to go? Are they going to leave their house with their lower payment and go rent somewhere for a higher payment? Or are they going to ride this out? What I'm telling you basically is that even if it stagnates, even if it goes down, you're not going to see 2008 again because there's no reason for there to be 2008 again. Hopefully that arms you for that wonderful question out there. Jason with Prosperity.
Nice job.
That was good stuff. All right, so we talked to you at our last sales meeting about our Realtor Champion program, and I'm honored today to have a Realtor Champion with us. I'd like to welcome up Danielle Gallant. Yay! I'm going to embarrass her a little bit more in front of you guys before I give her the microphone. So Danielle is a property manager, a realtor, a business owner here in Southern Nevada, and she's a realtor running for Assembly District 23.
Yeah, good memory.
Yes. So let's give her another round of applause for coming and joining.
And a Jeep owner. And a Jeep owner. You posted about that yesterday. That thing's ridiculous. It's like I have to like go like this in order to get into it. Yeah. It's good for parades though, which is now a need. Thank you for inviting me today. I appreciate it. I'm the broker of Guardian Realty. Let's see, I've been here since 2013, and I started a Guardian, and we manage over 300 homes in the valley. So how many property managers or landlords do I have in the room right now? Okay, all right. So everybody knows the last 2 years have been horrific, and what I saw happen to my owners the last 2 years has just been terrible. I mean, I had $100,000 of unpaid rents last summer. Now, we did get a lot of that with rental assistance, but that's a lot of money to carry for one particular owner, maybe $15,000 to $20,000, when, you know, they've lost their jobs and they're struggling as well. So when I found out my seat was going to be open, we've started the process, and I'm going to fight for our property rights. How many parents do I have in the room? Parents? Okay, good. More hands. Awesome. And how many have littles? Okay. So, homeschooling, Zoom, how was it? Horrible. We don't want to talk about it, do we? Yeah. So, we shut down our office, we're in property management. I've moved everybody to my house so that we can homeschool our kids at the dining room table, everyone, and try to get through the worst time of property management. I never want to do it again. So, and we lucked out, like we got our kids into private school, you know, that following year, so they didn't really miss, but I have apartment complexes, and I regret this, by the way, on Sahara and like Maryland, rough neighborhood. So we have cameras out there for safety. Those kids were outside every single day for the last year playing basketball because they could have gotten as many computers as they wanted, but they can't afford internet. Yes. So we've got generations of kids that really need proper schooling. That's definitely going to be a focus of mine. I think that will also help bring Nevada to entice more economy to come here, more businesses, which also helps with our property values. So you guys can go to my website. It's danielle4nv.com. Read up more about me. You'll have my cell phone number on there, so you'll always have access to me. And I appreciate it. Thank you. And have a wonderful day. Thanks.
Let's give her another round of applause.
And it's really important that we have realtors that understand our business and what we went through that are representing us in the state legislature to make sure that somebody understands what the hell we're talking about. So we have been getting a ton of questions, even though we just had a CE class about 3 months ago on 1031 exchanges. It's just something that's happening in our marketplace. People have a ton of equity, as Jason was talking about it, and so they're looking to do an exchange. And so what did I do right when it happened? I had to re-educate myself on how it works and all the pieces. So my first call was to Ashley Hunter. And I said, Ashley, I gotta do a 1031 exchange, and by the way, Ashley is with Tycor Title, and I'm gonna have her come up here in just a second. One of the best marketing reps I've ever worked with. She's just a lovely person. And I said, Ashley, who am I gonna talk to? And she reminded me about IPX, and so I'm happy to have Sarah with IPX here today to tell you everything you ever wanted to know about exchanges, right? But we're gonna give Ashley just a second to talk about Tycor Title. So give Ashley a round of applause.
I'm a sales executive at Tycor, and I know a lot of you, but if I don't know you, we need to get together. So I'm here for anything and everything marketing, help you carry out whatever your plans are, help take some things off your plate. So if we haven't met, let's do it. I know, and I'm confident that I can bring you value, especially with this one here. So remember this, if you are getting a listing or writing an offer, Stacy Griffith is your escrow officer, and that's who closed Barbara's deal.
Yes. You guys are fantastic.
And then, of course, like I said, I'm here for everything marketing. So Ashley Hunter,
So special.
Tycor at, or sales executive at
At least
Tycor.
for today.
Any questions? You guys need anything? All right, I'm going to introduce Sarah. So, you guys, she is amazing. So you're going to have her for about 45 minutes. It's very interactive. Ask her questions. I know that we're going to keep an eye on the chat for any questions on there too. Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Here you go. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the nice introduction. Ashley, no pressure on the expert status. I'll do my best. So part of my goal today really, and I don't have a PowerPoint, is because I want to empower you to be able to have that conversation with your client. To go over these questions that we're going to cover today, more than 30% of your market right now is investor driven. So they are out there. They are buying and selling houses. They are not afraid of a competitive market. They are highly motivated by a competitive market, actually. It allows them to diversify, consolidate. The options are endless for them. But before we get started or get too far down the path, I'm going to ask everybody to do me a favor and get out your cell phone if you have it with you. And you've probably been through this exercise before a time or two, but I can guarantee you that you are going to need me one day. It might be tomorrow, it might be next month, it might be 6 months from now, but you are going to need me. And unlike my ex, I actually want you to have my phone number and be able to get a hold of me when that moment comes. So I'm not offended if you put me in your phone as IPX Sarah or 1031 Sarah. You probably won't remember my name, but I'm going to give you my cell number. Feel free, you can text me when you're with a client, you can give me a call. So 1031 Sarah, I'm going to go ahead and give you my cell number. So it's 702-232-4576. Again, it's IPX 1031 Sarah.
I already have it.
I was just going to say, I know you have me in there. So.
I'm reading a text from a few weeks ago. You were very helpful. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Shorts. I never made it.
Nice to meet you in person. Thank you.
I asked you for a Chinese-speaking 1031 person, and you found me one.
That's right. Lei Chang. She's amazing. Yeah, we actually have, gosh, I want to say 6 or 7 multilingual exchange managers. So, and we have written material in 7 languages as well. So.
And out of the 5 or 6 different people I asked, you're the only one that came through.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm happy to hear that. I'm not sure we've opened her exchange yet, but we're still working on it.
I think it's
Oh, did we? Okay, good.
I hope you did.
Well, now I hope we did too. But again, my number is 702-232-4576. So 1031 Sarah, and thank you for doing that, I do appreciate it. But like I said, my goal really today is for us to have a conversation. I'm going to give you the basic requirements, a little bit of market information, but I really want you to ask me the questions and us to have that conversation, because the conversation we have is the conversation you're going to have with your client. And these are the points that they're going to be asking you about and that we can touch on. So I am a former realtor, by the way. I've been licensed in many states. I would say I'm a recovering realtor. I made it through the recession managing a brokerage. So I paid my dues there. And those great points that Jason made. I thought it was interesting in Nevada a couple of years ago. I decided just to take the course again just to refresh my brain and see if there were any updates. And I was really surprised in the class. They talked more about a reverse mortgage than they did a 1031 exchange. And I thought that's so silly, because as an agent, you don't deal with a reverse mortgage. You're not ever going to have any business that relates to a reverse mortgage. Whereas a 1031 exchange, you are going to have investor clients during your career. So it's important for you to have at least the basic information. So, and you'll forgive me if I look at my notes a little bit without my PowerPoint. So we can start going over, I'll go over the basic requirements. And like I said, feel free to interrupt me with any questions. So, basic requirements of an exchange is that your clients are going to be wanting to purchase property that's equal or greater in value to the property that they're selling. The second requirement is all of the cash or proceeds that are coming out of the property they're selling, or their relinquished property as we call it. You're going to reinvest those funds. They have to reinvest all of that money into the new purchase. If they retain any funds, they do pay capital gains on that. It's a taxable consequence if they retain any, or if they buy down in value. The third requirement is their debt. This one's always a little bit of a brain melter, so I apologize up front, but it makes sense if you think they're going to buy equal or greater in value. So debt needs to be replaced with debt, or the value of that debt can be replaced with cash. Right? So if I'm selling for $500 and I have a mortgage that's $200,000, and I'm going to buy for $500, I'm going to have that same mortgage for $200,000, or I'm going to replace that mortgage with cash. Okay? But I cannot pull out cash and replace that value with debt. Okay? The IRS is sort of picky about that. Okay? So debt for debt or cash for debt. You're not required to have a loan, but it's the value that we're talking about, because we're talking about buying equal or greater in value. Yes?
Does that mean, like, say I got a house with $400,000 equity, and I want to take out a, say, HELOC out of it and then sell it? And that's kind of what that's referring to, where I'll still get hit. I'm still going to get hit on the money that's basically tax-free because it's a loan. But when I sell it and pay it back, the IRS is still going to require me to pay back the $400,000 in taxes, or what?
Well, I think there's a couple of questions there, but so let's talk about that refi first, okay, about pulling out cash and that strategy.
Before I sell it with a 1031.
Right, but you don't want to counsel your clients to pull out cash up front if that's what their goal is, right? So let's say I've got that $300,000 in equity, and I do want to get some cash out of it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sell the property, I'm going to purchase my replacement, fulfill my exchange, and then I'm going to refi on my replacement property, okay? If you refi up front, that's a flag to the IRS, because it's an obvious strategy that you're pulling out cash before you sell a property, versus completing the exchange, then creating debt, which you're holding that property, right? And you're carrying forward with that debt. So I think that kind of answers the question. It was a different scenario you might have given me,
okay.
But yeah. So if they have a HELOC, though, they're going to pay that off as debt. That value still needs to be replaced. Okay. Did I answer that question?
We'll talk offline. We'll talk offline.
Well, I joke with Chris, the interesting thing about the 1031 business is that pretty much daily I get one of those hold my beer moments, where someone goes, wait, I'm gonna think about this, I'm gonna go watch a YouTube video or two, and then I think I've got it, I'm gonna come up with a scenario. Scenarios don't always work with the IRS. There are ways that you can get creative, and these investors are accomplishing those goals of long-term wealth building without pushing those boundaries, in other words, okay? Some exchangers are gonna be naturally more aggressive with those boundaries. We do work with them, but we always want your CPA to kind of be behind you on that, okay? So like kind, let's talk about that a little bit, because pretty much daily, I have a call from someone that's selling their primary residence. So a 1031 exchange is only applicable to investment properties, so not primary residences. If you're selling your primary residence, you already have the exclusion on your gain, right? You have the 121 exclusion. If you're single, it's up to $250,000. If you're married, it's up to $500,000. So primary residence sellers and buyers, they don't need me, okay? So purely investment property. When we talk about investment property, we talk about the 1031 exchange. Like kind is another point that gets very confused. Yes?
Sorry, this is a stupid question.
There are no stupid questions in the 1031 business, or ever.
Do they do commercial at all?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So like kind is that old myth of like single family residential for single family residential. You can sell a single family residential and buy a commercial property. You can buy a duplex, you can buy land. Basically all dirt real estate is like kind to other real estate, okay? You're not categorized to kind of stick there. So thank you for that question. That's great. Yes?
Based on what you just said, it's the same thing. So if I have an income producing rental property and I want to exchange that property for a piece of dirt that has no income, I can still consider that a like-kind exchange, even though it's not producing any income.
Yes, and the key there is your intent. What the IRS is looking at is your intent as an investor, right? So in other words, flippers, folks that buy homes, hold them for a short period of time and flip them, they're not getting the benefit of a 1031. They're paying full capital gains tax. When you see the TV shows and they've made 100 grand, that's pre-tax, okay? So flippers don't qualify. But yes, land, as long as your intent is to hold it for long-term investment, it absolutely works.
It's a long-term investment.
The minimum the IRS wants to see you hold it is 2 years.
Okay.
Okay? So.
Can I ask a question about that?
Of course.
Sorry. So I had something that happened years ago, and I thought it was a little squirrely, so I just want to run this by you. So,
Sure.
Client sells a house in California, does a 1031 exchange in a beautiful place in Red Rocks. Says he's going to live in California in his current home for 2 years, okay? Year and a couple of months, all of a sudden he's like, I'm moving back. And I was like, but it's supposed to be 2 years. And he goes, it's 2 tax returns.
Well, you have to admire the chutzpah of his CPA. and that's where that advice kind of is originating from, right?
Okay.
Now, there are strategies, and we have a lot of investors right now that are looking at purchasing a home in Las Vegas. So, again, I don't want to melt your brains too much, but there are strategies where your investor can sell an investment property, let's say in California, purchase a home here, meet some minimum requirements for 2 years, and then convert that property into a primary or second home. They're effectively double dipping in another 2 years because they have the benefit of deferring their capital gains on the investment, and they converted it to a primary. When they sell it, they're now selling it under the 121 exclusion, okay? You can reverse that. So if you have a primary, you can convert it into a rental for 2 years and effectively double dip when you sell it as well. You get that primary exclusion because you've occupied it for 2 out of the last 5, but the most recent 2, it was an investment property, okay? I know.
So you get both tax breaks?
You get both tax breaks, yeah. And so investors, and this is why I always tell realtors, I mean, don't be afraid of your investor clients. These are folks that are long-term wealth building, that are planning these transactions out by several years, and they don't care about your competitive market. They really don't. We are busier now than we were last year. Busier last year than we were the year before. It is going gangbusters. So they're not as afraid as you and I. Yes.
Just while we're on the same topic, I
Yes.
apologize, but I have to run the meeting. So if I exchange the rental for the land, and then I develop the land, you're saying as long as I have it as a rental for 2 years, or for the 18 months it takes to build anything, I would still be okay, because by the time I built that primary residence, I'm past that 2-year limit, I can convert it to a primary.
So building on that land is a different topic. Because once you're in, I know, I'm sorry. We're going to really advanced topics, you guys. I was going to do the basics, but we have jumped over the basics. So
There's always one in the crowd.
I'm
There's
sorry.
always one.
I'm from the basics. So it's
This is like free therapy, okay?
Every day I have these conversations, and I'm kind of a tax nerd. It sounds silly, but it is such a creative, fulfilling line of work because it ties in with the real estate industry, and I have a real passion for it. That's a different type of scenario. We could talk about that separately, but there are build-to-suit exchanges, there are reverse exchanges, there are really some fantastic strategies that get exchangers in and out of this market right now. A reverse exchange, for example, this would be gold for you, gold. So your investor is going to buy the replacement property up front because they have the cash, okay? So they're going to buy the replacement property. You can't hold title to your relinquished and replacement at the same time, so we're actually going to take title for you. We create an LLC. We're going to park that property. And you have 6 months to sell your relinquished property. That's 2 transactions for you straight out of the gate. Okay, and we add nothing to the transaction. We are really only involved at that escrow level. So, do you have a question? Yes.
Me, no.
Yes.
Okay. No, but I was just listening to what you were saying because I feel like I'm in that position right now.
Okay, and here's the thing. With a reverse exchange, I don't want to get into pricing too much, but reverse exchange is going to start at $6,000. I know that sounds like a lot, but if I'm an investor and I'm deferring $60,000 in capital gains, that is nothing to me, nothing. And so don't be afraid to have these conversations with your clients. They are driven by a larger financial picture for themselves and longer goals. So the other part of it, a little bit of a brain melter, we talk about those tax benefits. Exchanging is a long-term strategy for investors, long-term wealth building. One of the fantastic things about investment properties is as you exchange into these is that when you pass, these properties are passed on to your heirs tax-free with that stepped-up basis in place. It's an incredible benefit as you're building wealth for your family. So, should we go back to the basics?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I think we were talking about like-kind. So like-kind is basically all dirt real estate for other dirt real estate. There are other options for your clients right now. We have a lot of investors coming in and out of a DST or Delaware Statutory Trust. Has anybody heard of those? No? Okay. So those are sold through financial advisors, but in this competitive market, some investors are going to those as an option. It's where you're buying an interest in a group of real estate. So those are still viable options for your clients. So let's see. Let's talk about timeframes. Because time frames right now is really, really critical. So I'm sure everybody's heard of the 45-day and the 180. So your investor has 45 days to identify their replacement property, okay? Now, they can go under contract on that replacement property at any time. So you don't need to wait for that clock to start ticking. And that clock starts to tick at the close of escrow of their relinquished property. Okay, so does that make sense about going under contract up front? Sure, you have the contingency of the sale, but you also have a cash or cash-rich buyer and that kind of leverage on the other side. So you don't necessarily have to wait, but that seems to be the biggest crunch right now. I always tell our clients, I'm like, don't worry about filling out the form for me, because by the time you fill out the form for me, the contract's going to be written for somebody else. So really get out in the market. Every day I have that conversation with our clients. Get out in the market, go start looking for those replacement properties, okay? And there's no limit geographically there. So you can sell a property in California, you can buy anywhere in the United States. You can also buy properties in U.S. Virgin Islands and Guam. I have a gentleman buying a very nice house in St. Croix right now that I'm pretty sure he's gonna live in 2 years. So, unfortunately not Puerto Rico, which is very strange to me. I know, right? That was my first question too. I'm like, why would it be the U.S. Virgin Islands and not our own territory?
Right.
I have no idea why Puerto Rico is excluded. Absolutely none. Yeah. So any questions? We can talk about time frame a little bit. I know that seems to be the biggest crunch and pressure that everybody's under with their investor clients. Yes.
Outside of the United States, like Mexico, places like that, any benefits for investment property?
No.
You still have to pay the 30% that the government wants you to pay.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at selling a property in the United States and buying in Mexico, you can't exchange that. So you're definitely going to be paying capital gains. And when we talk about the taxes that your clients are facing, it's not just their capital gains tax. So if you've owned a property for any significant time, the very first tax when you sell an investment property is going to be that depreciation you've been taking. The IRS recaptures that at 25%. So if I have a rental house and I'm selling it and I've been depreciating it for 5 years, they're going to recapture that at 25%, and then it's capital gains tax on top of that at 15 to 20%. So that's why these investors are highly motivated. Okay.
I had heard, and maybe I dreamt this, no, that there was some talk about 1031 exchanges not going, that they were going to go away. Did I hear that right? Or there was some.
Realtor champions.
Okay, Your somebody realtor told me.
association's working to
Thank you.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, IPX, Fidelity, say NAR, we're all working hard to see that not happen.
Okay, good.
So, and it's come up in proposals the last several years. The current proposal is to limit the gain deferral up to at $500,000. Okay, so that's the current proposal, is that your clients wouldn't be able to defer more than $500,000 in gain.
So that's the issue, okay.
Yeah, with commercial properties, that is easily surpassed. So, and we work quite hard. We have a very large PAC that works hard against those proposals when they come up. 1031 exchanges have actually been part of the tax code for over 100 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It was
That's
originally
why I
between
didn't understand
farmers.
why that was being looked at.
It won't go away.
Okay.
I mean, that's just not my optimism speaking.
Right.
It's a huge part of not only the real estate economy, but the economy in general. It's a huge driver. So, yeah, they keep trying. Yes.
So on the 45 days, if, the problem right now is we put properties under contract all the time that, things happen, inspection, it doesn't, well, I guess it doesn't appraise by replacing the debt. How many it used to be 3, I could identify 3 replacements.
Correct.
So talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So your clients can identify up to 3 replacement properties regardless of the value. Okay. So again, I kind of look at this 45-day period as a work in progress. More than likely, you're going to get your clients under contract on that replacement property before they're officially identifying it with us. But if they hit that 45-day mark and they're still looking for replacement properties, they can identify 3 properties. And when you identify a property, you're basically leaving the door open for your ability to purchase it, is how we look at it. There are 2 exceptions to that rule, Chris. So it's 3 regardless of value. If you exceed identifying 3 properties, there is a value formula that kicks in at 200%. And we're very careful to counsel clients through the identification process. If you over-identify, you either have to purchase 95% of everything you've identified, or the exchange is voided. The IRS won't recognize it. So that's part of what we do, is we counsel clients through that process. We're guiding you through the code and making sure that we are structuring the scenario for those long-term goals that you have in mind. Okay. The other thing that's an important factor that kind of comes up, you may have heard it, is vesting in an exchange. So as you sell the property, is the same entity or individual name that you want to purchase the property in. Okay. Trust, you You can sell in your individual name and put it into a trust if it's a revocable trust, because a revocable trust is what we call a disregarded entity. It doesn't exist, in other words, as its own taxpayer status. So that's something we always talk to your clients about and touch base with kind of right away with them. Yes?
A long time ago, I had an opportunity to do a 1031 exchange. And that's where I learned about all the proceeds have to go and transferred over. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I put down 20% on this, and I was going to use that money to do an update on the new house I'm looking at. They said, no, you can't have any of that money. I go, well, that money wasn't proceeds. That money was my down payment on my old property that I wanted to go and use for, I'll do that, but I couldn't do it.
Right.
So is that changed at all, or is that the same way?
That has not changed, and
But you see my dilemma, right?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's a common point of confusion because you're absolutely, and that way of thinking, of course, I put 50,000 down. Why can't I get my 50,000 back? I'm still deferring my balance.
Right.
But this is the way the IRS says. They're like, good for you. You put $50,000 down and you made 200 grand. Yay. Oh, you want to try that again? Okay, you can try that again if you take all of that and do it again. But you cannot withdraw what you originally invested. If you withdraw what you originally invested, it's a taxable consequence and you pay capital gains on it. I understand the point exactly, how that may not make sense, but I have to, the IRS lives in a box.
I understand. I was just curious.
But her point earlier was buy the property and then get a new refi on the new property and use that money to do it. You've now bought it and you're now in that new position, and then you get a line of credit or whatever against the total equity you have. You've eliminated your problem. She's just saying don't do it before so you don't get taxed.
I get
This is
that.
IRS avoidance, that's all it is.
Exactly. And interestingly enough, I recently learned, I think they say 80% of the audits now are tagged by an algorithm. It's not even a human being that's like, shuffling through the papers going, red flag on this one. It's an algorithm. And apparently a huge percentage of what those algorithms flag is wrong. Big surprise, right? So yeah, you just want to avoid anything that's a flag or an obvious flag. If you have an aggressive CPA who says move into that house in a year and a half, it's your CPA that stands behind you when they file that return.
Is that
Ultimately.
algorithm running all the time or just around like that April time?
What was that?
Is that algorithm running all the time?
I'm not sure about that.
I'm sure it's right.
Because I should file in October, because I hear you're less likely to get audited.
I'm not sure, but I like it. Definitely, yeah. That's a solid maybe. I don't know about that one. So, any other topics or questions that you had with? Yes, Chris. I love this. Thank you so much. No.
Okay, so you talked about replacing the debt. So let's say I have a $300,000 equity position in a rental property. I have a $300,000 loan, so I have $600,000 total. I can incur more debt for more income, right? So I could go and incur $1 million loan with my $300,000 down, and it doesn't matter the amount of debt I incur as long as it makes sense for me. There's no limits to that.
Absolutely, yeah. You can buy up, you can diversify, you can consolidate. So a lot of folks, so interesting in Clark County right now, our investors are not scared. They are very, very excited because they're finally starting to see this equity that we have all waited for in the valley for so many years. So a lot of times what they're doing is diversifying. Selling that single family residential, buying a duplex, buying 2 or 3 single family, because again, they understand the formula with the rents going up, and they're not as concerned if their cash flow goes down a little bit, because the bigger picture is that I'm building wealth and I'm deferring my taxes. So don't let it scare you. Don't be afraid to have that conversation because they are motivated. Probably one of the last things I'll mention is that, I don't know if everyone's heard, with Clark County changing, as of I think it's July 1st, they're going to be changing the zone and changing those regulations to allow short-term rentals in different areas of the valley. So we don't know exactly what that allowance is going to be, whether you're going to buy lottery, what kind of system they're going to put in place. But I already have clients that are having that conversation with me. Like, I might be willing to have take a chance on having a B&B again. So they're very in tune to what's going on as a whole in the real estate market. Yes.
Okay.
I love it. I love it. Thank you.
So one of the things we've noticed a lot is that there are a lot of owner carry offer or deals that are out there right now because of the equity position. Can an owner who has an owner carry loan, so let's say that I have a buyer that I'm carrying paper for, can either of those parties 1031 as well for their position in that property?
You can. So if you're the seller and you're carrying that note, it's just like that debt that you have to replace.
Okay.
So if I'm going to carry a note of 100,000, I've got to come in with that 100,000 at the close to replace the value. Or if I don't, I am collecting those payments. Those payments are actually taxable income. So it's a taxable consequence outside of the exchange. But yes, it's definitely doable. One thing is between related parties, I get this question a lot. So the IRS does not like it if you sell and buy a home from your linear relative, your brother and sister in an exchange. That does not work because they consider it kind of a basis shift, right? If I buy a house from my brother, it's only an exchange if my brother is now doing an exchange, right? Because now we're both investors. If I'm buying from my brother and he's not doing an exchange, it's a basis shift between family members. So that's something, it's actually one of the first questions on the form that an investor files with a 1031 exchange is, was it related to a party? So that's important for you to know. Maida, were there any questions online or has
No, not
everyone
yet.
fallen asleep?
Not yet.
Okay, not yet. Yes.
So if you sell a unit in California and then you were to go out and buy 6 units in another state where it's more affordable, is there a limit to the amount of units that you could buy?
No. We had a recent exchange with 48 replacement properties. They sold a commercial property and bought 48 single families. These are the type of transactions that are out there and these are happening. It is reality. So no limitations. And we do have investors who are doing that coming out of California, going to the Midwest. And we're going to Florida, but I feel like Florida has now caught up with us as far as, you know, what those prices are. So yeah, you can go anywhere as far as that diversification. Yes.
So if you bought a home from your brother and sold it 18 months down the road, you don't have to gain?
Well, 18 months is, you're kind of right on the cusp. And if it's less than 2 years, what we say is talk to your CPA. We're certainly willing to host the exchange if your CPA says, yes, it's a valid exchangeable property. But if we know it's outside of the parameters, we want you to have a tax advisor or professional that is going to stand behind you. You know, we're really about, as part of the Fidelity family, we're really about quality, making sure we do things right. So if we know it's outside of the parameters, we want that other professional. But in that scenario, your brother would have also had to do an exchange. If you were exchanging into your brother's property, like if you sold a relinquished property and were buying his property, he would also have to be exchanging that property, which he can't if it's his primary. I know, that was a little pretzel. I'm sorry, you guys. Sometimes, well, and you know, sometimes anybody, even on the reverse exchange, and I saw you kind of doing the thing with your hand, I send out the flyer, I'm like, whoever did this visual is not a normal human being, the way they think about things flowing. So a lot of times even the questions are asked of me, I go, okay, wait a second, let me digest that. What is the bottom line of what's the motivation of that question? So, yes.
Just one clarification on the 5-year. I think you had mentioned if I lived in a property longer than 2 years and then left the property and now that's a rental property, but I still sell it within that 5 years, even though I didn't stay in that property the last 2 years, then I still could go ahead and not pay any capital gains.
Right, yeah. So again,
I got screwed.
Well, the key really is planning and information. And so part of when I say I want you to empower you to have that conversation with your client and understand just the basics of it, reach out to us. Because everybody's scenario is different, every investor's goal is different, and we want to be able to have that conversation, say, what are you really planning for here? But you're right, and that window is 5 years. So, yes.
So Sarah, with the relationship to your company, like I have investors all the time that ask, you these crazy questions, and I won't answer because I'm not a professional in tax changes,
Yeah.
right? How does the interaction work with you? Do you charge for consultations?
No, we're free.
Just the
We're
whole
free.
thing?
Yep, my brain is free. So, yeah, our consultations are free, and we actually have regional attorneys. So part of the power of IPX and the power of Fidelity is that we have the depth of professionals behind us. So I get strange questions every day too. If I don't know the answer to the question, I have an attorney who works for my team that I reach out to right away. We have that power at IPX. So we're not going to give, and I'm like a realtor. I don't know the answer. I'm not going to just like give something vague, or I'm saying, you know what, let me check with an attorney. And I'm not sure. Because you're right, people get overly creative or things that just don't work. So we do have those resources. And all of our staff members, I think we're all at a minimum of 10 years now as far as the staff experience. It's pretty incredible what we have in our Southwest division. So thank you for that question. I appreciate it. Any other questions? No? Yes.
This really isn't a question, but I just want to mention that last summer I had an investor that he had owned his property for 15 years and he was selling it, and here in Las Vegas. And then when he called me, I completely freaked out because he's like, okay, and he lives in India. Okay, I want to do a 1031 exchange of my property here, and then I'm going to buy a condo in LA for my daughter, blah, blah. And I like panicked, and I went, oh no, I think I'll call IPX. I think they'll be able to help me. And you guys totally took care of the whole thing. It was really easy.
Thank you so much.
It really was.
I appreciate that.
So I think a lot of realtors might get scared of something like that, which I obviously did. But thank God I have Amy to help me out as a transaction coordinator. But it's really not a scary thing, and a lot of realtors. I mean, it's like you said, it's very popular right now.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. I mean, when you look at the numbers are more than 30% of the real estate transactions in the Las Vegas market are investors. More than 30%,
Yeah.
that's a huge
That's
number.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's why I say it might not be tomorrow that you need me or next week, but you will
Yes.
eventually need me. And let us have that tough conversation and say, let's talk about the structure and let's talk about what you're
Oh
trying
yeah,
to
because
do.
I'm like,
And
just
make
talk
it
these
work.
through.
And also, it's important to know that an exchange needs to be put in place before the close of escrow of that relinquished property. I get a lot of calls. We closed yesterday.
Yeah, you can't do it. Yeah.
The train it's gone.
Train is gone, yeah.
Let's say the train is sailed, but that's not that saying. The boat is sailed.
The boat is sailed. The ship is sailed.
You've got to get it in place. We can do it on the close, the day of the close, but that's the last day. And a lot of times your clients will say to you, and it's exactly like you said, like, oh, I want to do a 1031. And the second they mention 1031, I would reach out to someone.
Right.
You know, and if they're not open to having that conversation with you, that's what we're here for.
Right.
We're not a party to your transaction. I have no effect on your transaction. You know, it's purely for that consultation with a client that's looking at a financial goal. So the minute they mention it, I would reach out to someone and say, hey, this person needs information, or connect us with your client. So our fees do double if it's the day of closing, not gonna lie. If it's within 24 hours and they've kind of procrastinated, the fee doubles. I'm never afraid to have that conversation with your client because I understand how much they are saving and what their bigger goal is, you know, versus a $2,000 bill. Yes?
So don't care what your fee is, but your fee is taken out at closing, and you guys handle that process with escrow. It shows up on the closing disclosure, that's all done at the point.
Yeah, it's actually not on the closing statement. We deduct it from proceeds on our side, but we don't run it through escrow. Yeah, and that's because an exchange fee is not a cost of selling the property, and that comes into play when we talk about that replacement value. That value is the sales price less the commissions and the closing costs. So we don't want to run something through a settlement statement that isn't a verifiable expense of selling the property. Yes.
All right, scenario.
I think you need a consultation.
You do. All right.
Yes, sir.
So, sell an investment property, $300,000 proceeds. Own a primary, have $300,000 still in debt. And the 1031 pay for the current house.
No.
Yeah,
but-
didn't know.
No, but I
That's why
love
I
how
asked.
you're thinking.
Yeah.
Sometimes I joke I'm the bearer of bad news because sometimes those answers are no. But I would rather be an honest no to your client versus them facing a big tax bill. But no, unfortunately, because anytime you're pulling out proceeds, you're gonna pay tax capital gains on that. So you could do it, but it wouldn't make sense from a financial perspective, okay? Just like folks that buy too far down. So if I sold for $1 million and I'm gonna purchase a replacement property for $300,000, there's no value in my deferral because I bought so far down in value. So that's what, another reason we wanna have that conversation with your client. So, no, but again, I appreciate the creativity. Yes, Kate?
Yep. If an owner lives in a property 2 out of 5 years and sales is under 250,000, will there be no capital gain?
I'm sorry, what was that? Sorry.
If an owner lives in a property for 2 out of 5 years and the sales is under 250,000, is there no capital gain?
They need
Correct.
to again.
Yeah, if they've converted it to a primary and they don't have more, if they're single and they don't have more than $250,000 in proceeds, yeah, then they get that primary exclusion under the 121. Val, did you have a question? I know you said you have an investor client.
Yes.
Yes.
It's kind of like onto the creative side. She was thinking, because she's doing a 1031 exchange on her property, but she wants to move into the one of the other property that's investment. And she wants to show it as a rental instead of her being there as an owner. How does that, like, any advice? Is it
Well,
like
my
bad?
first piece of advice would be don't lie to the IRS. That's always my first piece of advice. And here's the thing is that she can purchase that replacement property, okay? And if she purchases it as an investment that is a vacation/second home, the requirements are so minimal. The requirement would be 2 weeks a year that that property has to be rented. You can rent it to a family member for 2 weeks. If I rent it to my daughter for 2 weeks, I'm probably gonna buy her a purse or something, right? But I'm definitely gonna collect rent from my daughter, okay? So I would suggest that she meet those minimum requirements, rent it, and you limit your use as well to 2 weeks a year or 10% of the total time that it's available. That way she's done it the right way. I would say just be patient, be patient. You know, eye on the prize, but don't lie to the IRS. That's always my advice.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I would advise her the same thing if she called me. I'd always say, don't lie to the IRS. Don't get creative there, you know. Was there another question, Beta?
No.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions, or have I melted everybody's brain? You know, I hope it was a useful conversation this morning. Like I said, I just really want it to be where you feel comfortable, you know, and can start that conversation.
We've always had access to IPS. I mean, I heard about Sarah 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, she needs to come here. So utilize her, if you don't know the answer, just send it directly to Sarah. Don't even, I mean, know the basics, right? And that's all you really need to know, and send it over to Sarah. And then send me your answer.
Thank you so much for your time.
Let's get Sarah a round of applause. This isn't on.
So I was just yelling the whole time.
So real quick, I don't think she had a microphone on the whole time I got over. So real quick, please, 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 as a broker here telling you, do not give your clients tax advice. Do not tell your clients scenario advice, right? Find an expert to share the liability and to have them, so no offense, Sarah, have them take on the onus of giving that good advice, because that's what a realtor is, the source of information, right? So thank you again, really appreciate it. This is the Costco of real estate, in my opinion. You can find an investor that bought a piece of land 5 years ago for nothing, that's now worth $6-7 million. I kid you not, I have a guy that bought a parcel in Indian Springs, 12 acres for $180,000. It's worth $7 million now. I don't even know that most people know where the hell Indian Springs is at, right? But the whole point is, that is a perfect candidate for someone to take that money and buy 50 rail properties or buy a commercial plaza or whatever, and I get the benefit of selling that property and buying the other ones, and if you're a property manager, there's other benefits, but the whole point is thinking creatively of ways to get clients to build wealth means that you'll make commission. So I love 1031 for that reason, and it's cash, right? It's just like
That's right.
cash in most cases. So thank you so much for being here. Please don't forget to go and check out Danielle's webpage. What is it again? She has business cards again she'll share with you. And make sure you help us elect these great realtors to office. And thank you so much for being here. Enjoy your day.